You know, I usually try to start these episodes with some sort of bit. Usually it's like trivia, sometimes it's a comedic bit. But, well, this film isn't worth it. I mean, when it comes to horror films, usually the ones that don't perform that well at the box office are usually bland and mediocre at best. But then you get a film that just fails in so many ways. You're not sure where to start. I mean, it's making me go in the Shatner voice. Let's begin this episode of Romney's Reviews. The first problem, that's pretty much the biggest problem of the entire movie, is that there is little to no character development. We're literally just introduced to these characters that is basically a dysfunctional family, and we're suddenly expected to care about them as all the killing starts and all the bad stuff starts happening. But it's just a case of, I have no reason to care about the characters, so there's no real reason for me to be invested. And I understand, like, oh, it's just they're introduced so you're supposed to watch them die, but even in films like that, they at least let us get to know the killers. They let us know the people who are actually doing it so that we can still get invested in the film. But nope, none of that either. And then as the film progresses, we're then bombarded with like plot twists and reveals that are supposed to make things look surprising and, oh, I can't believe such and such was responsible for such and such. But again, we don't know anything about the characters, so there's no real status quo to be shattered by said plot twists and plot revelations. It just makes the characters seem even more unlikable, and therefore more unrelatable. The film then devolves into what is probably a very poor excuse of a send-up to the 80s slasher films, complete with 80s synth music and the frequently overused track of professional music that they were able to get licensed. Couple that with the fact that the film also then devolves into a showcase of really amateurish gore effects that even the 80s would be ashamed of. I mean, the audience's suspension of disbelief is not so much broken, but snapped in half, stuffed into a sack, hit against the wall repeatedly, poured out on the table, smashed with a hammer, with the powdery contents being sliced into lines and then snorted by the film's producers. After all of that, the film has the gall to try to then treat itself as a satire of slasher films. At least Tommy Wiseau waited until after The Room was released before he started marketing it as a dark comedy, but here, it does it within this film's runtime, and not only does it do it during the film's runtime, it expects the audience to forget that it was trying to be taken seriously at the start of the film. Overall, this film feels like a bad student film in terms of writing, pacing, and even the effects. We're basically given a hastily delivered yet somehow convoluted plot with no sense of foreshadowing or character development that isn't even sure what type of film it's supposed to be. The film doesn't even boast value as a laughably bad movie because the kills and gore effects are mediocre at best. They're really, really cheap and just downright unbelievable. This film isn't worth renting on Netflix. It's not even worth borrowing from a public library. It feels like a badly produced independent film that should have died off in the festival circuit as opposed to getting a theatrical release. All of that said, on my personal scale, I give You're Next a 1 out of 5. Yeah. I never thought I would ever give a theatrical release this rating, but no, it's that bad. It's not worth watching, even at a dollar theater. And before a lot of people start saying, oh, you don't like fun movies, it's a send-up of the 80s. No, it's not, because it was trying to be taken seriously at the start of the film. If it's gonna be a satire, that's something you have to establish at the start of the film. Cabin in the Woods did this. But nope, this film just feels like something that someone made just to give his makeup visual effects artist friends some work, as well as to give some actors something for their reel that they're probably going to regret later. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Paranoia. Hopefully it's a lot better than this. See you then.